it's Kune from the 2x eCommerce podcast show, and on this episode I'm going to be talking with John Kant, who is the founder of Rising Sun Commerce. Guess what they do? They do Amazon for Japan. So if you're ever thinking about launching your product into the Japanese market, obviously Amazon is a great platform to test the waters.
Welcome to 2x eCommerce, the e-commerce marketing growth podcast where you ask questions and I, Kune, answers them. Also hear from proven marketing growth experts who are number one or number two in specialist areas of online retail marketing. So if you work in or own an online retail business, listen in, get involved, join me, and let's put some fuel to skyrocket your e-commerce growth.
So an inbound marketing strategy is how do you beat Amazon?
Natural search and our search engine position is critical to the customer flow through the website.
I personally would not have an account process interrupt checkout flow at all.
My favorite customer lifetime value calculation is an easy one. It's your average order value times that purchase frequency that we just talked about times your customer lifespan.
I'm Kune Campbell. Let's get rolling.
A behemoth in itself, it's massive. It's an alternative e-commerce universe in the internet. You know, if you really think about it, it's a portal. Really, if you think about it, as a marketplace, it's making strides in the markets it chooses to operate in. Japan being one of its early markets, I believe. Anyway, I'm not going to babble too much. John Kant manages an agency called Rising Sun Commerce, and what he does essentially is launch brands into Amazon, Japan, and essentially helps you successfully sell on Amazon Japan. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome John to the show. Welcome, John.
Hi, Kunle. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great. It's fantastic to have you on here. Where are you tuning in from?
So I'm actually based in the UK. I'm in Hull in East Yorkshire.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. Okay. So you're about 3 hours from me. Right. So, John, could you take a minute or less to introduce yourself first, and then we jump right into Amazon Japan?
Yeah, sure. So I lived in Japan for 5 years, which is part of the story that's led me to work as run the agency that helps brands sell on Amazon Japan. And then I've also worked in e-commerce for about 9 years as well. So about 3 years ago, myself and my business partner joined forces to sell his products on Amazon Japan. He'd been running an Amazon private label brand himself for a few years, and he was looking at other markets to start selling his products in. Japan was on his radar. He knew that I'd lived in Japan, so we got talking over coffee one day, and that's sort of how we got started. Sold his products for a year or so, and then transitioned it into the agency side of the business as well. And then we've been doing it as an agency for about 2 years now.
About 2 years. Fantastic. Okay, so let's rewind back to your time in Japan. And then after that, we'll talk about your first experience, your first project essentially with your partner on Amazon Japan, launching private label brand. Let's start out with Japan. What did you do in the 5 years in Japan? Were you in business? What was your experience like in Japan?
Yes. So basically the root of the story is I met a young Japanese lady who was living in London. She wanted to go back to Japan, and I thought, yeah, I'll go back as well. Wanted a bit of adventure. So that's kind of what led me there in the first place. The easiest place for me to find a job was as an English teacher. So that's what I did. And I worked as an assistant English teacher in Japanese schools, in sort of junior high schools and elementary schools in the countryside in semi-rural Japan, and did that for sort of 5 years. But yeah, it was great, very interesting cultural experience. I was the only non-Japanese person in the school, and it's kids are kids everywhere, sort of thing. So it's not just people that want to learn English, which is what you get when you're teaching in sort of private adult schools. We're teaching in government schools. It's everyone and you're interacting with everyone. So it was a fantastic time of my life. Yeah, it was great.
Interesting. So you lived in rural Japan. You didn't live in Tokyo or any of the metropolitan cities.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I lived in a small town called Ida in Nagano for 1 year, and then I lived in Shizuoka, which is quite near Mount Fuji. I lived there for 4 years.
Well, what's the pace of life in the countryside?
It's very similar to UK countryside life. I mean, I live in a small town in East Yorkshire now, and it's kind of similar vibes, really. People do things at their own pace, but you could head to. I used to go to Tokyo and Osaka and stuff regularly, for the bright lights and a bit of excitement. So yeah, it's good.
And then how quickly in 5 years, in your span of 5 years, did you learn Japanese? Or had you already learned Japanese from England?
No, so when I got off the plane, I could only, knew a few words. I'd sort of studied on the tube and the bus as I knew I was going to be going to Japan for a few weeks before I went. But yeah, it was quite intimidating when I first arrived, thinking, how on earth do I learn this crazy language? But yeah, no, you're immersed in it, so you have to learn. Exactly. And yeah, just chipped away at it,
So do you write characters? Can you write in Japanese and speak?
Yeah, I could. My writing got to a decent level, I think.
Wow.
To be able to read a newspaper, you're meant to be able to know about 2,000 of the sort of Chinese style characters. I got up to about 800, I think, at my peak. To be honest, it's going down since I moved back to the UK. But I can generally decipher what's going on. Yeah.
Okay. Super interesting.
But don't worry, when it comes to the content and stuff of product listings, it's not me that's doing it. We got native speakers to do it.
Native speakers, which you can manage, who you can manage essentially.
Exactly.
Okay. Right. Okay. So let's jump to the first private label project you were involved in. So you met your partner, and he was selling, on Amazon, and decided Amazon Japan was a good idea. What products was he selling, and why did he think Japan was a great idea to launch?
Yeah, so he sells in sort of baby travel products. These rear view is a mirror that allows you to see your baby, in a newborn baby in a rear view facing car seat. He'd been selling those for a number of years on Amazon UK. And I think on his Seller Central panel, Amazon had been sort of encouraging sellers to launch into Japan, which is the trigger for it popping into his head, really, and that coming on his radar. Amazon Japan, it was one of the earliest marketplaces that they went to. It started in 1999. So
wow.
It's a very well-established market over there. I mean, it was slower to grow than the US and the UK, but it's like for like, it's about the same size as Amazon UK now.
Okay. So what's the opportunity in Amazon Japan in terms of like population, market size? So I could see here there are 126 million people in Japan. We're only about 65 million or so in the UK. It seems double the market, but you just alluded to the fact that it's about the same size as the UK, from an Amazon perspective. Could you sort of shed more light there, please?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's right. It's about double the UK population. In terms of e-commerce, it's about 22% of Japan's e-commerce. The other big player in Japan is Rakuten, which that was very much the dominant market leader, I'd say, for e-commerce. But over recent years, Amazon's been catching up, and it seems that it's sort of neck and neck with Rakuten these days as in terms of sort of market share. And then the third largest platform is Yahoo Shopping, which
Interesting.
only
Still
exists
running.
in Japan. Yeah,
Japan.
obviously in these parts and the US, it's sort of fallen by the wayside, but in Japan, it's still going strong.
And we're talking marketplaces here.
Yes, just talking about
Okay.
the three
Okay.
major marketplaces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity for outsiders, non-Japanese, to invest in to sell through Rakuten, or do you have to be domiciled in Japan?
Yeah, so the reason that attracted us to sort of positioning our business alongside Amazon is because that's the easiest place for overseas sellers to sell. With Rakuten, you need a Japanese business, and also on Yahoo, you need your business to be registered in Japan too.
Okay.
I think there are, on Rakuten, there are some rules that I think they allow some US sellers to sell, but as a British business, we're not allowed to sell on Rakuten.
I mean, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, US sellers or non-EU sellers serious about selling in the EU marketplace in the UK had to register for VAT at least. Are there any tax requirement in Japan at the retail level, like similar to VAT?
Yes. So you pay sales tax at the point where your goods arrive in the country, so before you've sold them. And there is a threshold as well of about 100,000 US dollars. But our understanding, the digging that we've done and spoken to a tax advisor in Japan, is that is only applicable to Japanese businesses. So as an international businesses, it doesn't seem to apply, is our interpretation of the rules. But we're not tax experts, disclaimer sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So what culturally, what appeals to the average Japanese, shopper who happens to be on Amazon? What does Amazon look like in Amazon Japan? I know I can check it out, but from your perspective as an expert and a seller, an active seller, what does it look like, and how does it compare to the UK and the US?
Yeah, so Japanese people, they like quality products, generally speaking. A lot of the big UK brands, high quality UK brands do very well in Japan. So Japanese people are quite happy to spend good money on quality products. Now, Amazon as a platform is all about value as well. So it's kind of a hybrid of where those two meet, if you like, because it's very competitive. So there's lots of sellers selling similar types of products. So it's very easy for customers to compare and contrast two different products, and then often it does drive down the prices, doesn't it, to some extent. So it's at the sort of crossroads where quality meets price, really, I'd say. Another sort of factor is the population density of Japan is quite high, so lots of people live in big cities. Apartments can be quite small, especially when you sort of thinking younger people that are typically living on their own still, they tend to live in smaller apartments, which fuels people buy less stuff, but they do like quality stuff.
Interesting. They buy less quality stuff, very Zenish. So you talked about competition. What about pricing? So obviously in Asia, in most Asian countries, things tend to be cheap or cheaper because they're close to cost price for what we're paying, here in the UK. Now in Japan, is valuation is pricing similar to the UK. So if like I was to buy a mug in the UK for £5, I could probably get that same mug retail for £3 in China. Would it still be £5 in Japan, or even higher, more expensive?
Yeah, so the prices are more aligned with the US and Europe than they are with China and the sort of cheaper Southeast Asian countries. From a GDP point of view, Japan's the third biggest economy in the world. Historically, its economy has been very strong. I think it used to be the biggest economy in the world during the bubble years in the early 90s and stuff. So prices are, generally speaking, they do hold up quite well in Japan.
Okay, makes sense. So over this past 2 years, you've been involved in, Amazon. What categories have you, successfully launched and, continue to sell on Amazon Japan?
So a lot of the work we've done is sort of sports, outdoors, homeware. Done a little bit in the beauty space. Those sorts of categories is where we've done most of our projects. The reason behind that is a lot of the compliance requirements for Japan can be quite complicated. So if you're selling things like food and drink related products or cosmetics or supplements, the compliance requirements can be very complex really to deal with, and that obviously has a knock-on effect of creating a bit of a barrier to entry because of the costs involved of getting products compliant to sell in Japan. So that's kind of explains why we've done a fair bit in those categories.
Okay, so from a psychological standpoint, from a buyer psychology standpoint, besides quality, do you sell culture? So, for instance, Chinese shoppers or Chinese buyers like very European, products. Do Japanese, consumers have any similar preference, or do they just care about the quality of the product?
Yeah, so there's a certain amount of I don't know, glamour, exoticness, I guess, to sort of buy made in USA or European British products kind of thing. But also the made in Japan brand is very strong in Japan. So that's sort of what but again, that's high quality products, I'd say. So we see, our clients, they'll highlight the fact that their product is, a US brand or a UK brand kind of thing. It's a good thing to highlight kind of thing when you're selling in Japan. So then that you're appealing to that audience that does like, the Britishness or the Americanness of the products.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go more technical. What about what's the process of launching a product? Say I have a sports product, an ab roller, for instance. I want to launch into Amazon Japan. Where do I start with research? Let's start out with research, with product research. Are there any tools we can use to sort of assess the viability of a product in Amazon Japan?
Good question. A lot of the main tools don't really work for Japan, in all honesty. So they've not really concentrated their data collection on Japan. So you're left with sort of more rudimentary manual research. So if you're going to do the research yourself, go onto Amazon Japan. You can use Google Translate to kind of use your search terms. It works well for sort of translating individual words. So, you can use that to type Japanese text into the search box to, reveal the product categories that you're looking at. And from that, you can see the product ratings and get a good feel sort of thing for if there's similar products selling and, if they've got lots of reviews. And then using the bestseller rank as well, the pages are laid out exactly the same as they are on Amazon.com or Amazon Europe. So if you know Amazon, you can find your way around quite easily. And then it would be to look at the bestseller rank to determine, if that product is selling well.
Interesting. Okay, and so once you've determined, okay, there's potential for a product. Is there FBA for Amazon Japan and Prime?
Yep. So yep, it's got both of those things. Yeah, they've got fulfillment centers dotted around the country, and Prime has been going for many years too. It's very well established. So, and the process for sending your products into the fulfillment centers works exactly the same way as it does on Amazon US.
I was going to ask. So, what is the process? You have a freight forwarder or an agent who transports it from your factory through to Japan. How long does clearance take at the port? You did mention the import tax. How smooth is the process from factory to warehouse?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two main points to mention here. One is you need what's called an importer of record or attorney customs procedure, which is basically somebody in Japan to accept delivery of goods into Japan of your products when you send them in. That's something that Amazon don't do. So you need to use a third party company to do that, which costs, 50, 100, 150 pounds, depending on how much stock you send in. It's not exorbitant. So no matter what you send in, you do need to make sure you've got that in place, because if you don't, your goods get returned and it becomes a lot of wasted money. So that's the one thing to say. And then from a time frame point of view, if goods are manufactured in China, then it's actually only 48 hours on a ship from China to Japan. So we've seen turnaround times of about 7 to 10 days from it leaving a factory to actually being stocked on the shelves on Amazon Japan in the fulfillment centers. So it's pretty swift.
That in itself is one reason to get in, given the fact that the market opportunity is similar to the UK. Your go-to market, time frame is really, really minimized, as compared to the UK.
Yeah, no, it's great from a cash flow perspective. You're turning your money around sort of 4 to 5 weeks earlier than you are comparatively in the US or Europe.
Exactly. What about reviews? So your product's up. What do you how do you sort of build out reviews? So with normal Amazon, you have tools that would help you email, clients post purchase. How do you go about acquiring reviews for a product?
Yeah, so the post purchase email tools, they still work for Japan. So you can set up a nice customer message once your product has gone out. You could use insert cards as well, to ask for a review from all the people that buy your product as well. Obviously, Amazon has its rules about, what you can and can't do in terms of asking for reviews. So, the rules for Japan are the same as everywhere else. So just need to be careful of that. But generally speaking, Japanese people, they're very good at leaving reviews. Yeah, when we were selling the mirrors that I referred to before, one customer, they kind of left. They took photos of the mirror in use and posted a review, and the review was so good and glowing, it looked like it was like a dodgy review, basically, the way that they'd gone the extra mile to post the review. So yeah,
to put in their efforts. Interesting. And so what's a percentage of how many in 10 orders would produce how many reviews come from every 10 orders you get in Amazon Japan on average?
So we saw review rates of about 3% when we were selling our mirrors.
Not bad at all. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I didn't even talk about the normal listings. So that, I assume, would be written in Japanese.
Yeah, exactly. You need to, 99% of the people in Japan speak Japanese, and that's exactly too. So yeah, you need to do that.
Is there anything peculiar in the way you frame selling a product? It's peculiar to the Japanese market, or would you take the same approach you would use for selling in the States or the UK, in Japan?
Yeah, Fundamentally, it's the same. I guess one peculiarity is around the language, the alphabet. So Japan has essentially 3 alphabets: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So for every word, there's potentially 3 different ways to write it. So when you're including your keywords in the listing and stuff, you just need to be conscious of that. And then, from when you have launched, you get to see your pay-per-click data if you're running advertising, and you can optimize based on what people are searching for. But I guess there are far more variations of writing a particular word or phrase than there are in English. So yeah,
super interested in with that one. And then what you guys do to use locals to help you?
Yeah, so we've got native staff that do the copywriting, and we take an English Amazon listing and do a hybrid of translating it, but then also looking at the product from a Japanese consumer's perspective, and maybe if there's any slight intricacies of the product that need highlighting in a bit different way, then we do that too. And then also look at it from the keyword perspective as well, not just translating on a one-to-one relationship the keywords that are used in English, but again, coming from Japanese to try and get the right keywords in there.
What about visuals? So what about visuals that have humans? Would you would you change the models to Japanese?
We've not A/B tested this in any particular statistically significant way yet. My instinct would be that, probably using Japanese models would increase sales, but I don't know. We've not. It's definitely something worth considering. But I think that's further down the line. A lot of the clients we've only been going a relatively short time, so a lot of the work we've done is around launching new clients, and they tend to take things steadily and slowly at the start, and then hopefully as sales increase over time, then it's about optimizing and doing those types of things.
Would you recommend any listeners who are not yet selling on Amazon to just start off on Amazon Japan?
We always encourage clients, if they're not selling on Amazon in the home market, to start selling on Amazon in the home market first. Because as you said at the start of the show, Amazon's a beast in its own self, in its own right, and you need to know and understand Amazon.
Understand it on your terms, exactly, in your cultural terms, really. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What about enhanced listings, product page listings? The brand, like claiming your brand. I forget what it's called, like brand
registry.
Brand registry, yes. Does that also apply in Japan? And can you create more enhanced pages on Amazon Japan?
Exactly, yeah. So you can get a brand store page. Interestingly, you don't necessarily need a Japanese trademark to get brand registry in Japan. From an Amazon perspective, if you've got brand registry on Amazon Europe or Amazon.com, you can add Japan to your brand registry kind of whatever it is, registration, I guess, and then you get all the advantages that go along with that. So being able to create a brand store page, I guess, is the main one. The enhanced brand content as well. Although interestingly, the enhanced brand content, or the A+ content as it's called as well, it's basically the same thing. That's available to all sellers in Japan. You don't necessarily need to.
Okay. That's interesting. That's a great perk. 2 other things I wanted to talk about was one around the images. Do like bright colors stand out better with obviously I know there's the white background rule with Amazon, if it still applies. Does that apply? Do you pick specific colors, or is that just a gimmick?
Again, in all honesty, I've not A/B tested this in any significant way. I mean, Japan in terms of its web design, a lot of the pages are very busy, and we do see a lot. Yeah, we do see a lot of listings with heavily annotated text on them. So that is a trend. Whether or not that turns into sales, I don't know. As I say, we've not A/B tested it to, enough of a degree to be able to say definitively.
Okay. And then what about videos? Are sellers allowed to upload videos, or do you need special permission?
Yes, as on Seller Central, you can't use videos at the moment on a product listing, but you can use them on a store page. So if you've got the brand registry, then you can add them to your store page, and you can run brand ads to get people to see your videos that way.
Okay. And then going back to my initial question around, taxation and, the business, setup, can I with my UK limited company, still essentially sell on Japan, or do I need to set up any separate entity in Japan to be able to sell on Amazon Japan?
No, you can use your British registered company to register for an Amazon account. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Is there any other thing that you think I haven't covered with Amazon Japan?
Yeah, I think we've done all the basics, to be honest. Yeah.
Brilliant. No, it's fascinating. It's definitely something entirely new to me. I've learnt a ton from this conversation, and I'm sure listeners might want to learn more about Amazon Japan, and might want to reach out to you. Your website is risensuncommerce.com. I would link to it in the show notes. But besides your website, are you active on any social media? What's the best way to follow you and get engaged with you?
Yeah, so drop me an email is probably the best. It's jc@risingsuncommerce.co.uk is the quickest and easiest way to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. It's as I said, it's super interesting going into new markets. A few shows ago, we talked about Vietnam, about sourcing from Vietnam. Someone's coming over to talk about China. I'm selling to Chinese, to the Chinese market in general. He runs an agency in the UK that help brands launch into China. So it's really exciting. And with season 5 of the 2X e-commerce podcast, we're going to cover a lot of cross-border, and this is a great start. So thank you so much for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.